There are a few basic rules that come into play when we want to start punching holes in the ground. First and foremost is to secure an underground damage prevention ticket. Unless special circumstances dictate otherwise, this includes excavation performed by using any kind of hand tool or mechanized means, including the augering of pole holes. Now, I'm not getting into all the particulars of submitting for and receiving an underground damage prevention ticket, but the 4 big things that field crews must verify and take into account regarding that particular ticket for that particular site is the start time and date. Unless state law says otherwise, typically no digging may begin before that legal start date and time listed on that ticket. Second, some tickets expire, some do not. Know your state's law as well as the specific lifespan of that ticket you're dealing with. Not only that, but once that ticket goes into effect, some states mandate that excavation must begin within an X amount of days after that legal start date and time. If that doesn't happen, then the state considers that ticket null and void. In other words, you're not talking about a simple call-in for a restake. You're talking about a whole nother ticket request, which can be an additional 2 or 3 day delay for that job. Third, whenever you plan on digging, it must fall within the geographical parameters listed on that ticket. And finally, all utilities are required to have responded in the affirmative. If they did not, or if there are any discrepancies, inquiries will have to be made and solutions reached before any digging begins. Another rule deals with surface encumbrances. A surface encumbrance is pretty much anything within the proximity of that excavation or trench that could adversely affect its integrity. In other words, it has the potential to cause a cave-in. This could be spoils piles, materials, co-workers, or even equipment. The weight of that object can place undue stress on the soil immediately adjacent to that trench wall and induce a failure, which may not be considered significant if the trench is shallow. But regardless of depths, you start getting equipment and materials involved, it's going to hurt when a cave-in results in a buried or crushed worker. Let's back up and discuss spoils piles for a minute. Not only may they be a potential surface encumbrance inducing a trench failure, another issue with spoils piles being too close to the edge of a trench is that they can be used to artificially increase the depth of the hole as per OSHA standards. For example, let's say that here we have a 3-foot deep trench. Now, as per OSHA standards, typically, and there are exceptions, but typically there are no requirements for ladders, ramps, and protective systems just yet. So, we just dig a hole and we work in it. However, if we have a 2-foot high spoils pile along even just one face of that trench, then OSHA may now take that 3-foot trench depth, add the 2-foot tall spoils pile to it, and come up with a whole new number of 5. Based on this new number of 5, OSHA may now consider our trench to be 5 feet deep. With this being the case, we will now be required to have a means of access and egress along with a form of a protective system, all for a trench that is, in practical terms, only 3 foot deep. A convenient and completely legal method of mitigating this headache is to simply keep all your spoils piles at least 2 feet away from the edge of the excavation or trench that workers may be planning to enter. This will keep that 3-foot trench at a legal 3-foot depth. Yet another issue with having anything too close to the excavation or trench is the inability to detect any impending failure of the wall. The first signs of trench failure are fissures and tension cracks. As a general rule of thumb, these fissures and tension cracks begin about 1/2 to 3/4 of the depth of the hole back from the edge of the trench. What this means is that if we have a 3-foot deep trench, and if it begins to fail, cracks will generally start forming 1.5 to 2 feet back from the edge. If we have a 4-foot deep trench, and if it begins to fail, then cracks will generally start forming 2 to 3 foot back from the edge. Now granted, when these cracks start, there is very little, if any, time for workers to get out, hence the need and requirement of a protective system. But on the off chance that we're having a very lucky day and our trench is failing in
super slow motion,
then we want to have that ability to detect those impending signs of failure. And this is not going to be possible with a spoils pile, or anything else for that matter, too close to the excavation, because it will serve as a visual obstruction concealing all signs of the impending doom.